Yes, I believe so.
Welcome to season 2 of Fresh Off the Boat. My name is Arjun. I'm the founder director of EdBrand and College Fair. Today we have a very special guest, Anushri Dasgupta. Anushri is a student I've known, was a student I've known for the last 16 years, and she's charted a pretty interesting path, and her journey has led to a very specific interest area in the human resource sourcing industry. And so I think she's devoted more than 6 to 7 years in that field. Love to hear more about that. At the same time, love to hear your voice up front and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Anushri Dasgupta. I am currently a technical sourcing recruiter for an electric vehicle company called Rivian. Prior to that, I was with Amazon for 6 years. I was a human resources generalist with a consulting company before that for a couple of years. And I did my master's in sociology and bachelor's in communication. So yeah, that's pretty much been my career trajectory so far.
Yeah, what looked really interesting to me while you were in high school and thinking of studying abroad, that your family already had roots and connections in the valley, and there was that thing that, okay, choosing schools in that area would be good. And there weren't too many choices being in the Bay Area, especially liberal arts colleges. So how was it like when you finally ended up choosing to go to Santa Clara? How did it all pan out, and what opportunities did it lead to in terms of where you are today?
So I actually had obviously quite a few conversations with you, and I think you zeroed in on Santa Clara University being sort of like not necessarily a solely liberal arts college, because it does have a strong engineering and commerce program as well, but certainly a university that could offer a well-rounded education. I actually did the early application process with you, and you guided me through that. So applied in November. I think I was one of the few students who applied in person. I actually flew out to be with my dad, drove straight from the airport to the university, and gave in my application to the admissions office. So really old-fashioned. And yeah, I got through pretty quickly. By Christmas, I basically knew that I was going to Santa Clara. By January, my father had enrolled me in the dorms. So as far as I was concerned, this was it. I actually hadn't heard back from other universities at that point. And in my case, I was also flying out in April before the board exam results were out. So I'd basically moved bag and baggage to the United States. It's only when I landed in the US, after I'd already done sort of like a pre-orientation with Santa Clara, that I got an email from UCLA. You haven't selected your dorms yet. That's when we actually called up our relatives in India, and they checked through our physical mail and found the UCLA acceptance letter. So then we actually sat down as a family to figure out whether I was still going to stick to Santa Clara or whether I was going to, switch and go off to UCLA. That would mean a totally different city, but it was also a bigger name university, obviously very strong communication, program over there. Amazing for anybody who's probably considering a field like sort of like an entertainment related field, which at that time I was even thinking about. Ended up still sticking to Santa Clara, primarily because a typical UCLA freshman, class for beginners might be something like, 300 to a 700. The number might even be bigger now. Whereas a Santa Clara typical, class size would be like 50 to 60. I decided I actually needed more like of a personalized attention class. So that's kind of why I ended up going with Santa Clara. Average classes were even smaller for the arts programs. They were like something like 30. And it was just much easier for me to participate in a class of 30 than to show, genuine interest and actually learn in a class of, 300 plus. So that was one of the big reasons why I decided to go to Santa Clara. I just felt like if I'm coming all the way to the United States, I just want to, be in a situation where I'm really learning and absorbing and not just, being in a class for the heck of it and just earning a degree. So that was one of the major reasons why I decided to choose Santa Clara University.
So how did it then pan out in terms of choosing your major, getting some experiences which are outside of the classroom, and then even looking at pre-professional sort of opportunities, and then finally landing a job?
So for me, communication was actually a major. I had probably decided fairly early on in the process, like even during the application process. So I don't know if you remember this, but you actually had me meet the vice dean of the communications program in Santa Clara before I formally submitted my application. So he had already walked me through what, some of the sample classes would be like. So I'd already made up my mind, what I would do, while choosing it as a major. So because I'd already made up my mind, that was much easier. What I thought at that time was that I would probably go into journalism or maybe something like an entertainment industry. Once I actually started taking the classes, I realized that there are so many avenues. It's that I just not considered, because as a high school student, I just didn't know that, those avenues existed. So for me, communication it felt like a good choice, because I knew I wanted to be in a profession where I'm getting to talk and connect to people. And so I ended up sticking with it. As I went along further in my studies, I also realized I could take up minors, and my classes in sociology and ethnic studies were really interesting. I thought they tied in well with my communication classes, so I ended up doing minors in sociology and ethnic studies as well.
Great. Yeah, and then in terms of, exploring life outside of the classroom, clubs, societies, other such sort of jobs on campus, what was that like at Santa Clara?
So one of the good things, I think, being in a smaller campus is, you get to have like these campus fairs, everyone, tries to recruit you to these clubs. So I was actually part of community action program in the university pretty early on, which meant that I was taking part in, some of the more activist kind of clubs, things like racial equality, LGBTQ equality. So there were just a lot of different programs that I was joining at that time, and it tied in very well with my studies as well. So for me, that was a good opportunity. The other thing that I also got involved in as soon as I had the employment authorization document was that I took up a part-time job as a math grader, which is totally different, not really connected with like the communication. But because I had done maths up, class 12 board, the level is reasonably high. I ended up getting that job, and it paid decently well and covers some of your expenses at any rate. I also ended up becoming a research assistant for one of my professors who was teaching both sociology and ethnic studies, which is also pretty rare in the undergrad level, but at Santa Clara, those opportunities were already available for students.
That's fantastic. You seem to be a pretty busy student while you were pursuing your undergrad degree. What about, when does a student like you started thinking of what next? That hits you, right? This is a bubble we live in. It's a very interesting, safe space. And then there's a real world out there. How did you start planning for your pre-professional journey?
Probably junior year. So it was an interesting time because the 2008 recession hit. So I had already started exploring some avenues. I had gone down to LA. We had toured Paramount. I was going to have a call with Universal Studios, and then the recession hit and the call got canceled. So that internship opportunity was gone. And I think that's when I realized I need to now start planning, because some opportunities are going to dry up. I ended up taking an aptitude test in college, and the top two professions came out to be teaching and human resources. So I actually started applying to internships and training programs in human resources, as well as applying for masters, just to keep both the avenues open. That's when I ended up getting that training program with right after university. So I did that. Plus I did kind of like an internship with a senior center where they would have you do like some research work and come up with statistical and qualitative analysis of the seniors in the center, and that all those reports were going to be submitted to the county. So I was sort of writing two boats at the same time, just because I was quite unsure of what I wanted to do.
Great. And I think, then you finally sort of interned at some of this a similar organization in HR.
Mhm.
How did that work out, and what was your initial internship experience like?
So the senior center internship actually was arranged by a senior classmate of mine. She actually knew some, county officials who arranged for that internship. And then the other training program, I actually ended up just applying through online job boards and getting a call, from a recruiter who just had me go down to their office in Palo Alto and interview. So yeah, it's both very different processes, but was kind of doing both at the same time and just learning what the fields were for me. Yeah.
Anushree, it was great. Thank you for sharing your experiences of moving to the US, choosing Santa Clara, experiencing life in a smaller college, using all the resources, and also then dealing with all the changes that happened around 2008 when the crisis hit. So all the best with your journey in the future, and we'll be in touch.